Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk HR. Today, I'm joined by Martin, Charlie, and Natalie, and we're going to talk about something looking into the future, the benefits of the future, the sort of things that you're going to really want if you're going to take that job back at Google, Meta, or one of the other Salesforce, all the tech companies that have flushed everyone out recently. But to start with just introductions, Martin, you've just done another podcast. I think it was with Mike L&D. Mike Shaw, yeah. Is This Room Free podcast? Can you tell everyone a little bit about that if they want to find out more?
Yeah, so the podcast is really a HR careers podcast where every episode I'm joined by a HR professional to try and bring in as broad a range of profiles from every niche within the HR spectrum. We talk through their career, but really the best bits are the insights, like the little rabbit holes that we go and explore. So there's hopefully something for everyone if you're entry-level HR all the way up to seasoned HR director. You can either listen to people who are in the role that you aspire to be in, or if you're currently kind of in more of a senior position, listen to your peer group in terms of getting kind of more maybe modern thinking, just understanding what's going on in other people's worlds.
And Martin's also a recruitment consultant, but as you see, we left with the podcast because it's not about getting you to change your jobs. If you're happy, you're happy, and it's all about expanding your skills. Charlie, Claire, who you introduced me to, has been doing a great series for OK Positive over January, introducing sort of January blues and how people are feeling and stuff like that. It's had some really good engagement, isn't it? Do you want to tell people a little more about what she's doing?
Yeah, Claire's been helping us with a range of content on a short content campaign around just topics that we've seen and she has seen in the workplace that are affecting, every position and role, around communication, around how to deal with time management, a whole host of things that are useful takeaways. And that's one of the big things that we focus on, is around small actions that individuals can take within their job, within their day, to help themselves and also help the people around them. So it's just useful little bite-sized chunks that people can kind of watch on their commute or when they're taking a coffee break, and hopefully it's useful. But yeah, it's getting great engagement, and I think the more we highlight this information, the more we can help people to empathize and be a bit more compassionate with each other in the workplace as well. So yeah, that's kind of the basis of what it's about.
And Natalie, by the time this goes live, obviously the complicated whiteboard of new integrations, new website, new Reeboks, everything should be live by then. How much of this relaunch in January is a big commitment, isn't it? How's it going?
It's going really well, thank you. So we've been toying with this probably for the past 8 months upon feedback from not only our clients, but as the company has continued to grow and expand, it just seems like a natural thing to have a bit more of a whizzy presence, if you like. So it's really nice to see it all coming together behind the scenes, and it relaunches very shortly. So yes, but it does feel like my arm has been cut off. Because we've had the website for such a long time, but obviously we've rebranded, so we've got a different logo. We've dropped the strap line of being a virtual HR consultancy because we're seeing more and more people just coming into our office and seeing us physically and training with us. So it's all really positive things.
Good. So lots going on, and it's only, we're recording this in January 24th is when we're recording it. There's a lot going on already so far this year. Now we're going to talk about the benefits of the future, and I'm going to ask each of you to give me a couple of benefits you think people are going to be asking for in the future. But to give you a little bit of time to think about it, I'm going to start with one of the ones that I think I've been thinking about. I think people are going to want to see in their future careers, which is fully funded sabbaticals for rest and rejuvenation. One of the things I got to at a point where I was probably mid-30s, and I've been working since I was 16, is I hit a breaking point and I just needed to take a break. I needed to come away from it. Martin, are you seeing more and more people taking a break between jobs, or is it that people just are continuing to go, that I'll leave, I'll start? Is R&R becoming kind of an important thing for people in their career choices?
I think so. I think typically within HR as a profession, it's heavily female dominated. So, as a sector in itself, you often historically have found that there would be people who would take time out because they would start a family. But I'm certainly seeing it kind of more and more. It tends to happen more, if I'm really honest, at kind of the kind of mid to senior level, where they'll maybe get to a role such as a HR business partner, where they start to get more project orientated and build up a bit of a kind of project manager type skill set, where they can go into an organization, deliver on a project and go, do you know what? I think I've done that. Now I'm going to take a bit of a break, renovate a house, go do a bit of traveling, something like that, where I think it works well in that situation because they've probably been paid quite well, built up a bit of a kind of a nest fund, so that can really kind of facilitate them to go off and have that sabbatical break. So I think flipping that's where I'm kind of seeing it right now, flipping it, and where you're looking at kind of more paid sabbaticals, that kind of opens the door to the rest of the masses, really.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I was looking at is, let's say you've put 10 years, companies want commitment, companies need to give commitment. Let's say you give 10 years to a company and potentially you could have 6 months off paid or something like that. Is that potentially something that would make me stay at a company for longer, potentially?
I think, just to kind of jump in, I think that is an interesting one, because you can swing that back into organizations that trialed unlimited work, unlimited holidays. Because I've, over the last probably 5 years, I think, since it came out, I can't remember who was the first that did it. It wasn't Virgin or somebody, was it? But somebody did it. And I was really quite interested in that. I think I had 23 days at the time, so I was really like, is this going to be a thing? And I know a lot of times where that actually didn't work, and companies ended up pulling it back and just giving an inflated, beyond statutory and inflated level of holidays. And what they found was, where they gave it unlimited, nobody put their head above the parapet and went, do you know what, I'm going to take 2 months off. You're going to pay me. It's within my kind of rights. I'm going to go off and do some traveling of Southeast Asia for 2 months, come back. That never really happened. People just kind of sat with what they were taking. But what the other end of the spectrum, there were people not using enough holidays, so not kind of taking enough time off. And I guess the concept of it, not backfired, but maybe where there was like, I don't know, I shouldn't say this, but the Daily Mail scaremongering saying, well, you're not going to have any staff in your organization because everyone's just going to take, a year off. It more kind of went the other way. And I think that kind of feeds into it, where that concept didn't really kind of get off the ground, but where you may be looking at a kind of paid sabbatical, I think people feel a little bit more in kind of, it's okay to do that. It's a thing. I'm allowed to do it. And I'm not putting my head above the parapet of, well, I'm going to be the person that takes 40 days this year versus everyone else that takes, 25 and kind of just stays within that norm.
And you can plan for it almost, can't you, Natalie? If you think about, a sabbatical, I've been here 10 years, I'm going to take 6 months off. I'm going to tell them I'm taking 6 months off a year. I think the unlimited holidays for me, and probably Charlie will say this as well, the anxiety of taking more than your fair share and putting everyone's other job, putting people's jobs at risks and livelihoods at risks and creating instability for people. If you were to take an extra day's holiday, probably does push you to go the other way, because there's not a expectation. Whereas planning a sabbatical, making everyone aware, is a good thing, surely.
I think, from my perspective, all of these concepts and trials are interesting, because traditionally what I've seen is a lot of these benefits and opportunities are put on people rather than looking at the individuals and people within the businesses themselves. So someone will see another company doing, what was that one at Bumble, where they had a week off, and full well that if the whole company's on a week off, they're going to have 2 weeks of work that they're coming back to. And they're probably going to be working, if you're in the tech team or the engineering team or in the customer success team, you're not going to get that benefit. And it's kind of the idea of a sabbatical or even unlimited holidays. It's putting the pressure on the individuals around, this is the way things work. But you may be someone that doesn't want to take 6 months off and wants to build up a level of experience or finish that project, or say you've got a sprint in a technology project that you're doing and you want to see the end of it and you want to be the person that leads that process. But no, actually, I've got this sabbatical now, or I'm due it I think traditionally recruitment were big for sabbaticals after, say, 5 or 6 years of service and things like that, rewarding that. But I've always been of the opinion that if you have a process in a business or a way of working, an environment that allows people to have their lives while working, they won't search for that 6 months off to be free of it, because they're able to live their lives alongside their job itself. And I think every business is different, right? There'll be social care and public sector healthcare that won't have the opportunity of sabbaticals, but you then go and work and you're pushing people to a market of where they probably prefer to be in the startups and the ecosystems that let them have those benefits. And I think the issue is every business is different, and you need to find what works for the people in your organization and put them first at the decision-making process. Because to Martin's point, it did backfire a little bit in the sense that there was that guilt and anxiety around taking holidays. And so they needed to find a way that actually, how do we make this work for everyone, not just a proportion of people that are maybe young, don't have young families, can travel the world. We're assuming a lot of things about what people want. Because I took an example for me, I took a week and a half off at Christmas, and I immediately became ill because I just gone off of my process of how I do my day and my exercise and my routine. And I didn't enjoy necessarily switching off for that long. I'd rather be working a bit and doing my own thing. So it works differently for everyone, because I know that's not the case for everyone. I just think the issue, and on the topic of benefits, is it's been put on a lot of people rather than involving them in the process of the decision making. If you lead people to a decision, it can be far more powerful in terms of its impact.
Can I just add another bit that I was having a conversation. I kind of toyed around with the idea. We offer 25 days, and another point that's quite interesting, we do work anywhere, work any hours. So I don't really tie the team into, okay, you need to be in the office or you need to be working from home. One of the teams from Bulgaria, and she can go home and see her family. She just works the time difference. That's all it is. And I toyed around with the idea of kind of expanding to unlimited holidays, just kind of bouncing the idea around. I spoke to one of my friends about it, and he works in the public sector, and he saw the kind of the good side of it. But he actually, this really like flummoxed me. He said if they were to do it in the public service, there are people who, despite having that entitlement given to everybody, it's not, only you get it, it's parity across the board. He said there would be resentment from individuals in the organization to others who took it. So even though they've got the entitlement to access it, they wouldn't take it, and then they would be resentful of others who did take it, and it would create discord within the culture of teams. And I was like, that blew my mind. If you've got access to it but you don't take it, that's your choice. But to then be resentful to others who have taken what is their right, but that was something I just wasn't thinking about.
It's because
That's
of different
the other side that I see. So when I'm speaking with my clients and things like that, often or not, if we have a group of people or a group of employees in a particular department that will be taking essentially what they're entitled to. So they run an unlimited holiday scheme. However, you've got the clash between the two groups. So you'll have the groups that do want to take more holiday and they've made the most of that benefit and everything else, versus the guys that are just scraping over their statutory entitlement when they've actually got a company enhancement as well. You're starting to see actually there is disgruntlement between the teams. We've actually experienced grievances raised as part of this, saying that, they're taking the mickey and we're not being able to take time off because they've taken too much time off and the company only allows X amount of people off at one time. So I agree. We've also have the concept you mentioned, Martin, around we can work anywhere at any time. It does work in some organizations. The one area that I think will always fall behind is where you have to have a physical presence to be able to undertake the work that you do. So some of our clients are within the manufacturing industry. They're saying all of these wonderful benefits, the futuristic benefits they call it, when they're working in very old school environments. They're like, do you know what? You just keep giving and giving and giving, and what is it that you're actually getting back from this? So I think if any employers are potentially watching this, one of the things that I would be asking myself, if you're thinking, let's implement, this, that, and the other, quite rightly so, with Charlie's advice, is that we shouldn't assume what people want. We should always really look into what is it that we're trying to get to as a business, and how do we bring the employees along for that journey? Because if you start I've got one client that has handed them the moon on a stick, is what we call it. They have got every benefit under the sun. They also have very good wages. They can work from home. So they've even stopped giving out season ticket loans because of the issues experienced with, the rail strikes and things like that. So they're like, well, if we could do the job at home, we might as well just carry on doing it from home. So that they do have that really good arrangement, but they have a really high level of turnover. So they're not retaining. And, they offer an incredible package that people would only ever dream of. And people don't want it. So when they're trying to recruit new members of staff, they're really struggling to find the talent that will fit in with the culture, because people do want to have, or they want to know, the people that they're working with. So
I think it's really interesting, because I was thinking about this recently, just kind of through my head of I work in recruitment, so my job is to try and we get a vacancy from a client, and we've got to try and kind of attract people to be interested in that role. And I was just thinking, it's not the benefits that you focus on. It really isn't. So you can throw the moon at the stick. It comes down to, what's the actual job? What's the culture of the organization like? What's the where can this job take me? So if I engage and start on this journey, what does that pathway look like for me? And that could be financial, career development, better work-life balance, whatever it may be. And I think sometimes we can get a little bit caught up in, masking over the problem by, like you say, throwing kind of more benefits on top of it. Well, what are the benefits there to achieve? Get your foundations right, and then build your benefits on top of that.
Yeah, I think we're seeing the rise of this, what I call the steady eddies. So as we've come out of the pandemic, people have realised actually there's more to life than work. And James and I have spoken at this at length, and it's fascinating how deep you can go with this subject, because it's so individual, and people have different, whether we like it or not, they have different expectations of that working environment now. So it's not just a case of, I go to work and everything else. What people want sometimes is just to be able to pay their bills. Work is it used to be at the forefront of their life. They've probably built a career, and you've got returning mums and parents and people that have had children over COVID. We've got a fantastic diversity of people within the workforce at the moment. But the one thing that's always been underestimated in every business, and you cannot operate without them, is the steady eddies. So people just want to, the amount of people I've actually spoken to, and they've said, I'm just going to go and work on the tills at Tesco's, because I want to be able to do my job, leave it at the door, and then I can go home and be normal, and I can do whatever I want to do during my free time without worrying of the additional pressures of work. I've got fellow HR consultants that I speak to regularly that have said, actually, it's a lot of pressure. So I just want to be able to go in, do a business partner job, finish at 5 o'clock, and then I can go home and not worry about it, rather than the stresses of running a business. So it's horses for courses, isn't it? Everybody has different needs and different priorities. And we're really starting to see that shape the future of the workforce, including benefits, retention, and of course, how we attract people to work in the organisations. But I'm all for the steady eddies coming in, because it will really stabilise a lot of businesses that have been traditionally made up of a very competitive environment, full of high performers, and everyone's jumping over each other to get a promotion, or you've got people that are underperforming, and there was never that middle ground to balance everything out. So power to the steady eddies out there.
So let me give you some more benefits of the future. that I've been looking at, just to see what if anything's like actually, because one of the things you mentioned, yeah, you can throw another moon at the stick, but on one of the ones where we had women's health, there was a young girl, she had a hysterectomy at 22. She was paying £600 a month for HRT. And if there was an insurance policy that she could get with her employer that would pay for that for her, she would stay at that company for life, because that's life-saving support for her. And that was worth more than any, it's not about the money. It's about a company values her life. That's what she would see that as an investment in. And there's different views of it. So let me give you some more. This one's for Charlie. Artificial intelligence powered career development and mentoring. Comprehensive genetic testing for personalized health plans. Sustainable commuting options and carbon offset.
These are really out there. I was thinking what's achievable in the next.
Virtual reality, training and wellness.
James, what's wrong with the gym membership?
Well, but like Peloton, for example, but with a VR headset. And then the last one is biometric-based health tracking and personalized benefits.
Wow.
Now, if you saw any company offer any of those, would you be like, I want to work there?
Isn't that a little bit like when, I think, is it Vitality through their private health? They give you an Apple Watch so that, you've got to kind of keep up a certain level of activity to keep your premium paid for by the organization. That's, I guess, creeping into that kind of biometric monitoring, which...
I don't know if you ever watched Scrubs.
Your premium, doesn't it? It reduces your premium. It doesn't mean you keep the benefit. You have the benefit, but your premiums will go down if you...
all right. So I know one organization who pay it for their staff, and if they go they drop below a certain level of activity, the company doesn't pay for it.
This is what's interesting for me about benefits, and actually what really frustrates me about benefits is that, I'll use the example. Technically, if you offered everyone in your organization a toothbrush, you count that as a benefit, right? You've given them a toothbrush. But until they brush their teeth with it regularly, there's no benefit or impact from it. And that's the problem we have with benefits, is we put all these different things on, all the things you've named there, which are quite exciting in terms of their possible application, but also the simple ones like therapy. If you have therapy within a business and no one touches it, there's no impact. It's not a benefit. It's a useless platitude that people are putting on and saying, look how good we look. And this is the issue. We're never impact focused. And I think one of the biggest things we'll move away from is actually, I'm seeing this because I do it in my business. We don't do time-based work. We do goal-based, goal-orientated work. And the issue with that, and the good thing about that for me, I find, is that, yes, we all have different lifestyles. We have different flexibilities, different priorities. And as an organization, we prioritize getting the best out of people by working within how they like to work best. That's the simple truth of it. That's what we prioritize. If I was to promote people, it will be based on the fact that they're happy in their jobs, they're content, and they're working as they want to and delivering on their goals that they've set themselves and we've set with them. And so you could look at that and go, oh, well, that's ridiculous. We need them in 9 to 5 for the core hours. But it's actually like, well, no, if you set the goals that you want to achieve that week, if they do it in 2 hours, you've still achieved those goals and you've hit those targets that you want to hit. Then again, you could look at it and say, well, this is an ever-changing picture. We'll change your goals. If you're doing it in 2 hours in a month and you don't need to do any more work, you've probably set your goals too low. And that's a way to look at it and go, right, how do we stimulate? Because as Martin made a point, and Natalie as well, around people want clarity of role, they want clear communication, they want to feel like they're respected and valued in their job and they're making a difference. And you can see all the stats around inspired employees versus engaged versus disengaged, how far more productive inspired employees are. But I think we need to move away from this idea that, yeah, we've got an insurance provider, we've got this. There's no impact to that if people don't want it or it's not relevant. To James's point on the lady with the hysterectomy, that is the impact of that benefit is what motivates her. The impact of what it provides. I know that there's a lovely guy called Antonio at Yertle who's doing that in social care, and he's looking at carers in a workplace that have the stresses of cares, the financial burden of cares, and providing insurance and support on that. It's going to be relevant to people within businesses, but not everyone within a particular business, because you could be a young professional starting out who doesn't have any dependents and doesn't have any elderly parents or things like that, or people unwell. And that's not a benefit. Just by saying there's access to something really frustrates me is it's not a benefit. The impact is a benefit.
I think one of the points I wanted to add on to that, Charlie, is that one of the things that our clients are coming to most at the moment when they're looking at their benefit schemes and everything else is actually around critical illness and life insurance, and also health insurance, not just for them, but for their families as well. So for small businesses, you know, it can be a very, very expensive benefit, especially if you've got, or you're retaining employees. Obviously, those benefits then become more expensive as they get older, because that's just how insurances work. When you're so the one analogy I always use is that we should never assume how we what our employees want, because you could put in anything and it just may not be what they're looking for in that life cycle. As the example that James has given, people's circumstances change all the time, and therefore priorities change. So what could be in date now could be out of date in 2 months' time. So in the same way you would have a HR system, your information is only as good as the data you put into it. And if you haven't got any data and you're just throwing it out there and wondering, well, why aren't people picking this up? This is an amazing benefit. You know, you just haven't really researched it, and you've probably wasted a shed load of money as well. So it's worth getting that information, and probably getting it via an external provider, because it's quite time consuming. Get an expert involved that does know what they're doing, and they would be able to drill down what it is exactly that the employees are looking for.
I think going back to your original point, James, listening to those, they all sound a little bit ridiculous and audacious where we are right now. But I reckon some of those are going to come in, because it'll get implemented somewhere. There'll be a lot of PR around it. And then somebody else will go look over the garden fence and go, oh, well, we need that. So completely away from your point, Charlie, of not what's the actual benefit that we're trying to achieve here. It's more, you know, we're in a consumer society. We want the next thing.
Yeah.
And
you can see it on adverts,
magpies, we get distracted, don't we? So I, as ridiculous as some of those are, they will come into play.
Yeah, well, you see it on adverts in between the football now. So I watch football quite a lot, but you see people testing or sending away samples, like blood samples or whatever it is, and they then get results back. You see it in celebrity culture where they're being tested in advance for cancers, because either they've got relatives that have genetically, or you know, they may have passed it down through generations. So I can really relate to Martin's point on that one. I really do think it's going to be a thing, because people are, you know, now more focused on their well-being and their health more than anything else. So you know, which is all really positive stuff, but obviously it needs to be the right solution for the right company, as Martin said.
One organization, so the VR Peloton headsets, let's go and pay a few influencers. It'll go all over social media. Give it 6 to 12 months. The kids will be wanting to do it. They won't get it. They won't understand what it's about, but they just want it.
Yeah.
And then that drives it. So whether we need it, whether it's going to be right for us, is a different conversation to whether these things will happen. I think there is an inevitability around some of this stuff. I mean, I was asked a question recently just around, you know, Meta doing interviews via VR headsets, and someone from people management interviewed me and said, will that become, you know, a thing? And I was like, if somebody asked me to do it now, I haven't got a VR headset. So, you know, we're not at that stage yet that people have the tools and the equipment available to do it. And then what happens? Do we create our own avatar? So it's not really who we are and what we look like. So
Ready Player One, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. So, but it'll happen. It will happen. You know, I actually said no, it won't happen. But it will at some point. It's just, you know, not now, not 5 years, not 10 years, but these things will happen.
Do you think we could get to a point where, you know, where people create, I don't know, like not a fake profile, but you could get a profile on Facebook that doesn't look 100% legitimate. Do you think that ultimately we could end up in a situation where we actually don't know who we're working with?
Probably.
I think that
Because
comes
if you
down
work in
to
a
the interview
metaverse,
process.
you're not.
Yeah,
Well, I
if
mean,
it's metaverse,
also,
you can
if you
do
work in a
whatever.
massive bank, you don't know who works in the IT department in Singapore,
Mm.
do you? So it's like it already exists. Like it's, I think, yeah, I think when we're talking about these things around the future and how things will work and genetic testing, all that kind of stuff, the key is it will be in the control of the consumer or the individual within this situation. Like you'll choose whether you want to do these things. Like, you know, the age-old question, would you like to know when you're going to die? Some people were like, no, I wouldn't. Some people were like, tell me the date so I can live my life to the fullest. When in reality, it's a very scary premise of looking at it. Would you like to know the exact date you're going to pass away? Probably not for me, but it may be different for people around this call. So it's like, once again, I think you've got to hone in on the focus of, I suppose, individuals and what their priorities are and what the organization prioritizes as well. And I think if they're prioritizing something shiny to attract new talent to their business, it's probably going to be positioned in the wrong way. And to the point of changing things within a business where people are already working, you might lose people from there because they're like, I don't like the way things are changing, and I'll find somewhere that's more fit to my skill set and my priorities. So it's also not a bad thing that people move around businesses. I mean, it's the way the world works, but it's when you see the real issues coming in, a benefit without impact is pointless, in my opinion.
I think
So.
I was just, sorry.
Go on.
Can I just say one last thing? I was just going to say, it feels like we're getting in this conversation about, really to kind of Charlie's point of what is absolutely key to a better life for that individual versus maybe what's better for the organization. Because you were talking about the hysterectomy lady. The point I was going to make for what I think I'd love to see it, enhanced paternity leave. 2 weeks for the dad is nothing. I'm a dad. Trust me, I've had 2 different experiences. I had 2 weeks off with our first son, and then he was straight back to work. And then the second one, he was born during kind of COVID. So I've spent so much time with him. Completely different relationship with two children.
Well, that pretty much takes us on to the question, Martin. The closing question, which was at the start, I asked you 2 benefits you would want to see for the future. And I think that you've just articulated brilliantly. Extended paternity leave for fathers, that would really benefit you if you were to be looking for employability, because you've benefited so much from it during COVID. Is there another one that you'd be looking for?
Not to piggyback, but private healthcare. I think your benefits also change as you go through your, what stage of life you're at. We've had my wife's pregnant again. We're having loads of issues with the NHS. I'm just hearing horror stories left, right, and centre about the NHS. That is not going to get better. That situation is not going to improve. So I'm kind of now going, right, I need to look at an alternative. And the only alternative is to go private. So if I was somebody and a private healthcare was offered, currently where I am now, that would be highly desirable because it's costly. It's kind of one of those things you don't need it until you need it, but when you do, my God, you need it. So certainly private, complete private health. I guess like the US.
From my perspective, and I think there's 2 main areas that I'd focus on. One being, on that point of communication, real-time feedback and support in terms of actually understanding how people are feeling within a business and what best ways to support them. Obviously, I'm quite biased in that area anyway. But the second point that would lead to is maybe a standardization across every organization where it's subsidized in some form, that you get a set level of benefits that just come as standard across businesses. And it's like, it's a level playing field across that. And anything on top of that is your choice as a business to go ahead. But having some form of, I know they tried to do that with employee assistance programs, but it just didn't work because it was a race to the bottom, and the money and the situation, the commercialization of it led to, they wanted lower.
Telephone number on a business card for a lot of people.
Yeah, and that's it. And ultimately, which you can get from great charitable organizations, that are nothing to do with your organization at all. And so you know, having that, putting the people at the forefront and actually having that, because that will just help businesses anyway. And the issue that I found, particularly for HR in that situation, is employees think that HR works for the organization. The senior leadership and organization think that HR work for the employees. There's a mistrust and a discord in most cases, which is unfair on the HR system itself, because it's an impossible win. You're in a rock and a hard place. So actually opening up that communication and going, this is an evidence impact metric that we're going to be doing. This is what the issues and successes are. This is what we're going to do about it based on what they've said. And this is how it worked. And if you do that, the benefits will filter in behind that. And if that doesn't work, or people don't want to do that as much or can't afford to, then I would look at standardization of, you know, this is, people do get private healthcare as part of it, but it costs X, Y, and Z, but that's just a standard. And then if businesses want to go above and beyond, they can, but there is a bare minimum of what they have to fit so that everyone is getting access to at least the core principles of what people are feeling and what they want.
I think it's a really interesting idea, because you could say, okay, well, let's say your salary is 10,000. And if you want private healthcare, you would sacrifice £500 a year of that, and you would tag it. And then it'd be a lot cheaper than if you were to buy it outright yourself. But you could take it as pre-tax benefits. So that company would offer it.
Yeah.
Which is the issue, because, you know, government aren't going to be putting any money out in any time soon, are they? So, yeah, it's that. You asked me my ideal situation.
I really like that as a concept. I think, you know, because you could say, okay, well, I'm going to pay £200. I'm going to take £200 a year off my top line salary for increased paternity leave. And I'm going to have that as an insurance across all jobs that I take. It's really, as a core concept, it would be really interesting. Someone's going to ruin it in the comments. You can guarantee it, can't you? Natalie, for you, two benefits.
Two benefits to rule them all. So if anyone has had a chance to see it this week, the BBC published an article which was based around the levels of unemployment within the UK, and they broke it into 3 sections. Sorry, I am reading it from underneath you, so if it looks like I'm doing auto cue, I probably am. So it was split into 3 groups, which was ages between 16 and 24. Ages of 25 to 49, and ages 50 to 64, which is the general, you know, working life. So one of the things that really came out and stuck out for me was the age 25 to 49 group. And reading the stats here, it says that nearly 1.5 million people in the UK in that age group are caring. So it doesn't stipulate whether that is for childcare or whatnot. One of the biggest questions that we get here at Reeboks HR is generally, how do we get working parents into, you know, an organization? How do we cater for their needs? And, you know, because they've got people depending on them. So one of the issues that's going on in the wider economy is the childcare issue. It's really expensive. Most people, whether it's private or whether it's a government run or public, or however the nursery is set up or the schools are set up, generally is that it's too expensive. They have to wait for places. And most of the time, the really good ones, you're waiting for years. So even before you've had your child, you have to put your name on the list to be able to get a place. So one of the things that I think would really support, I completely agree with Martin's point, you know, actual paid lengthy or much more lengthy paternity leave is absolutely essential, like they do in Scandinavia. But when we're looking at childcare support, that is the majority of people are unemployed because of that reason, because of childcare issues. So one of the things that we've actually got a client that has a creche on site. So the working families aren't, you know, they have a safe place for their children. They can go down at certain points throughout the day. There's arranged activities, and that is funded for by the company. It saves them a lot of money and time lost in people not being able to be present because they have children, because they're so restricted. So my second benefit would actually be a bit more Martin Lewis, would be around financial wellness as a standard education piece in organisations from the get-go. I also think that it should be in the education system as a whole and as a standard anyway, purely because the amount of times that we get requests for people to subsidize their salary at the moment so that they can pay their energy bill is unreal, so that people can actually afford to feed their families as a standard. It's just about being a bit more relevant to what's going on. It's not just what's going on inside the company, because obviously that's important, but again, it's just down to what employers can afford. I mean, to be honest with you, if we had financial educators within businesses as standard, or just even had it as a general training or part of the self-development, then I think people would be in a much more comfortable place in themselves. And a lot of mental health issues, Charlie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, generate from financial stress and pressure from those sorts of, being able to pay their bills. And this is not a new thing. This is something that's been going on for many years, where people have got themselves into debt, for example. It's really stressful, and it's caused a lot of issues and mental health problems. So if we can even just remove one element of those two issues, I think that workplaces would be a lot more productive, and of course help Martin with his job and help people to put the right people in the right organisations.
So what do you guys think, watching this, of these benefits? Do you think these are what you would want in your future career, or is it some of the futuristic benefits that you're going to want to see in your future career? Do you want us to talk about different stages of life and how benefits may change? How when you're starting your career to when you're looking at retirement to now, Martin mentioned private healthcare, which is something I've had to pay for myself over the last 6 months, because waiting lists for pain clinic were 12 months. So it was either 12 months in pain or pay £300 to see someone. All different people have different benefits, probably at different points of time in their life. And do you want us to explore this in more detail? Let us know. Do you want us to go into more detail about this? Maybe financial wellness should be the extra 2 years of maths everyone learns. Financial independence, how it all comes together, instead of putting letters into maths. Maybe understanding how finance and pensions and investments work may help a person be more financially independent. It's not what the government are going to do, though, is it? This has been Let's Talk HR. Thank you very much to Martin, Charlie, and Natalie for joining us. This has been the benefits of the future. I think one of the things we've learned is there is no one size fits all. However, if you talk to people, find out what they want, find out what they're interested in, find out what has a benefit, you may be able to come with a really basic base package, and then look at ways that you can actually enhance salary so people can invest in the things that really benefit them. Thank you very much, all three of you, and we'll catch you on the next one. Take care.